Right. Today we're talking to Phil Shelley, Senior Operational Manager at NHS England and the National Lead for Net Zero Food. Hi, Phil.
Hi, David. Good to meet up again.
And I just want to kick off with a thought about, did you get involved in preparing and cooking food when you were growing up?
Not really. It was not a skill that certainly came naturally, that's for sure. I think my mum, had a total surprise when I went into food. And I think growing up, food was really important to me because I love my sport and as most boys, particularly in teenage years, I ate everything, and probably sort of ate all the wrong things, but because I was always going off and doing football, cricket, and rugby, then I was always snacking. So meals were important, but
Hmm.
snacking around those meals to give you the extra energy, became more and more important to me. And of course, when you look back on things like that, then you realise all the wrong things you were eating. But that's life, isn't it, in general?
Yep, it is. So what did you want to do after school?
I think the first thing I wanted to do was to be a PE teacher because sport was so integral. I was kind of, even though you do the normal things around things like, being prefect and stuff like that, as games captain, it became everything to me. Setting up teams and trying to motivate people and things like that. And I absolutely loved it. And of course, we've seen it more and more now that a lot of people go into those wider sports activities. And I went to a careers fair and I actually started speaking to some people around the services. Um, and the Merchant Navy in particular, they were telling me, well, you can not only do a bit of traveling, but we will actually give you a terrific grounding around food and working within teams. And surprise to me, I just dropped everything and decided that was for me. So from the age of 16, I left school and very quickly I was off. And for the next couple of years, I went to Royal to Merchant Navy College down in Gravesend in Kent, and started to then travel the world and then start to handle food properly, and kind of learn from scratch, really.
Tell us just a little bit about this early part of your working life.
Yeah, I did. I mean, even through sort of school, lots of little part-time jobs going on. As youngsters, we always did paper rounds, but I was very keen to go and sort of help out in kitchens and get a bit of an idea of what food was all about. Mum was never very keen on preparing food. Mum was on her own, so therefore going out to work and then coming back and looking after it was, meals were almost a bit of a second thought. So I was quite happy to sort of try and get involved and do my best. So yeah, I always worked from the age of 14. I worked in sort of restaurant kitchens mainly, doing a bit of prep, doing a bit of washing up, and I think that was always there then in my mind. So when we got to the careers fair, it kind of, things sometimes just happen, don't they? And you don't realize until you look back and think, I can understand how it happened now. But yeah, it was kind of, I mean, even though Dad passed away quite early, I had an incredibly happy childhood with a younger brother, younger sister, and as I say, food was always key to the day.
Okay. Um, After the Merchant Navy, what happened next?
Well, I kind of, I came back. It was interesting. The conversations I had at the careers fair for me didn't quite map out, and they wanted me to learn more and to take the sort of the appropriate qualifications. And to do that, they suggested that they would give me some sort of support, but I would then come back on land and go to college for the next few years and do my City and Guilds and NVQing. And I did that in Somerset, where I was brought up. The problem is when you come back from sea and you're on land, it's very difficult then to go back and you start building up a network of friends, you start doing more sports activities and that. So I had a couple of years here in Taunton, and that was it. I wrote and said, I'm not going to be coming back. Thanks for what you've done for me,
Mm.
but I'm going to go into restaurant and hotel work directly from college. So that's what I did.
And just tell us a little bit about that. What sort of work were you doing then?
I joined Trust House 40 as it was. I went straight. My mum must have thought I couldn't wait to get away because I came, went off Merchant Navy, came back to college, and as soon as I finished college, I went straight up to London. So I went to Trust House 40. I worked in the airport hotels there. It was the Skyway Hotel along the Bath Road there on the A4 into London, and it was a new world for me. Being involved in mass catering. I was a junior chef to party there, and I led the sauce section. Absolutely loved it, and it taught me a lot about life. The fact that you're on the edge of London, doesn't take long to get in, but at the same time, you're learning about airport life. We actually had a contract for Air India, so every time there was fog around Heathrow and things like that, then we would have all of the cancelled flights from Air India coming to us. So it taught me a lot about the Asian menus. Um, and I did a couple of years there, and then they were very encouraging with Trust House 40 around your career and what you should do. And then a chef de partie job came up at the Imperial Hotel, which is a five-star in Torquay, and they're very well known for their gastronomic weekends and the sort of the whole English Riviera picture. So I went down to Torquay then for the next couple of years, and again, very different to London, but a busyness of its own.
Mm.
Particularly in the spring, in the summer. But then, because of Torquay being such a resort, they had these special festivals and weekends that they would run, and it had a reputation in those days.
Mm.
So yeah, Harry Murray, who very involved in the hospitality industry, he was my general manager at the Imperial Hotel, and again, I crossed paths with him again recently and met up with him. We shared some stories. So it taught me what life was about
Mm.
for a chef, but for a manager, for a leader, for
Mm.
conferences and events. And I'm very proud to have worked with Harry in those times. But yeah, that's kind of what I went into really directly from college.
Okay. I was going to ask you actually about anyone who's been a particular inspiration or acted as a sort of a mentor for you in your career. Would you
Mm.
say Harry would be one of those people?
Certainly younger, as a younger person coming through. Um, when someone walks into a room, sometimes they don't have to say anything, do they? They just they've got that aura, and Harry is the general manager at the Imperial. Everywhere he went, when he walked into the restaurant, even the customers, it was kind of, oh, general managers here, and it was the respect. You don't have to shout the odds. You kind of, and for me that was particularly, losing my dad. Really, you kind of often you have those people and you think, wow, that's the sort of person that I want to be. So I think early on he was a figurehead for me.
Mm.
No doubt about it.
At what point did you start to get involved in the hospital catering side of things, Phil?
Yeah, it kind of, I drifted around a little bit from restaurant work. I actually got married in 1986. My wife came over from the Faroe Islands to learn English in Torquay, and and we met. She only had a 6 month permit. I wouldn't let her go back then, and said, please, please stay. And she then had to get a longer permit. Um, and a few years later we got married, and after spending a few years in the Faroe Islands, which I was desperate to do because I felt, having got married, I felt it was so important for me to understand where she'd come from. So we were there for 3 years, and then when we came back, a school friend of mine kept ringing me non-stop. Oh, you got to come and work in the NHS. I thought, I'm a hotel restaurant chef. What on earth would I want to do? I really did not understand the picture at all. And probably over a period of a year, he was ringing me on and off, and saying, "Oh, this vacancy's come up now." So in the end, I went and met and then with some of the leaders in Musgrove Park Hospital in Somerset, and I became head chef there. So I went there as head chef, and that was in about 1992. And yeah, well, you look back in it, that was the change of life for me.
Mm.
Total change of life. I really, my total respect and understand, and hopefully over the years, that's what I've tried to reflect to people, around food in the NHS, that it can make a difference to every single person in life. And for me, it was an absolute game changer.
What was perhaps the biggest either surprise or change you had to make switching from hotels to the NHS?
Mm, I think the bit that the style of cooking, first of all, because even though we were cooking for a lot of people in hotels in particular, we weren't particularly cooking in bulk. It was still very a la carte meals, whereas in the hospital sector, it was very bulk. We
Mm.
were fresh cook at the time, so everything was made in house. Bakery, butchery, all the pies, everything was homemade. So that was a total experience for me. The bit I think though that really sparked for me was going to ward level and speaking to patients. That for me changed the perspective of the importance of the NHS chef and what they can do. When you can go out into a restaurant and speak to customers, it's all a bit jovial, isn't it?
Mm.
Are you enjoying your meal? And someone was like, oh yeah, steak was good. I wish I'd had some of the different sauce with it and things like that. You go up and see the patients, and it is a very different mindset of the approach, the topic of conversation. It is more about, what do you need? And so yeah, that changed. I think it changed my behavior from being a young person into really being, an adult.
Did you have a sense of a career? Could you see a sort of a pathway and progression?
Yeah, after being head chef for a couple of years, I got very close to the catering manager, and then as in essence it was, as we used to call it, the hotel services manager. And they were very good to me, and they obviously felt that, I had the potential to go into management. So I'm very thankful for they gave me a pathway, and then moved me in it. Always a bit of a smart move sometimes, where if you're going to go up, you need to go sideways a little bit. So, because it's difficult. You're suddenly a member of the team, and then you change to lead that team, and that's not easy, is it? So I moved into assistant catering manager, but they put me in charge of retail, and that helped because I moved then into another team, and I started to lead them. And then in time, I then came back into the catering manager role, leading both retail and patient catering. And of course, then that went into facilities roles, leading other things like portering and cleaning and car parking, commercial, all those sorts of things. But it is, I think, being a manager, being a leader in catering, I think gives you the tools for everything.
What are the benefits, Phil, of getting involved in an industry organisation like the Hospital Caterers Association?
Yeah, it was you're very reliant sometimes on whether your hospital has already got that link. And we had a tenuous link, but we had one or two that, particularly, obviously, the two Carolines, Caroline Darrell, Caroline Rowlands, and also Anna Warman. I mean, they really took me under their wing to come into the Southwest branch, which is a terrific and still absolutely buzzing branch, which again is always helpful. You then start to network, don't you? And I think my first conference was up at Birmingham, and then we went to the Blackpool and then up to Scotland, and then you start to sort of understand, well, what is this association all about? How does it network, and what's the benefit of the networking? Um, and both you and I know, as you know, as time goes on, you don't realize how important it is until you look back and see all of those networking things that happen and just make life so much more interesting, don't they?
Mm. Just thinking for a moment, from the point of view of someone who's sort of looking outside the industry in,
Mm.
especially young people looking at a potential career, they might see working in the public sector in a catering role as a bit of a low pay, dead end job. So what's the reality?
Yeah, well, the reality is, and now we're working closer with colleges, they get it. They absolutely get it. The lecturers get it, and we're going in and speaking to teams now, and they understand that food is just not for enjoyment. It is also part of life. You know, new food now is nutrition, and whether you are a young and fit person and you're looking to look after yourself in the best way possible, and you're starting to, you know, to build your body, or whether you're an older person and you need to be eating the right food to sort of enhance any type of recovery, or to stop any of that vulnerability that can often come to you as your body changes. Chefs have such a role to play now in that, in the way that we write menus, in the way that we fortify our foods, and in the way that we create balance. And of course, whatever the topic is on the news, you can often associate it with health and social care in some way. You know, whether it is around finance, whether it is actually uh, around, I suppose, the way we live, you know, the balance of the way we live, and hopefully the conversations we now have, we're seeing a lot more drift of people training around food and actually then coming into the public sector because they know they can make a fundamental difference to so many more people.
Hmm. Thanks. And finally, what piece of advice would you give to someone who was considering working in hospital catering, for example?
Mm. Well, first of all, I'd always say, you know, be brave and take that step. Don't be frightened about possibly what you often hear, because it can be negative. Go and speak to people that have experience being in the NHS, and not just in food. You know, speak to dietitians and to nurses, because of that working relationship that we now have with those people. They will tell you how important your role is in the way of well-being and the way of recovery. It's a tremendous opportunity, and things like the competitions, the working together across the public sector now, it is quite incredible. You know, what we've seen in the last 10 years, I think, speaks volumes of the work that we're all doing together to enhance those roles.
That's terrific. Thank you very much, Phil.
So, okay,
Yep.
brilliant. Thanks, David.
Just